Well, hey folks, listen, has this ever happened to you? You set up for a shot like this, you take a shot, you throw what you think is a good shot, and then when you get up there, you find your disc has rolled away into OB and into trouble. Well, we're gonna talk a little bit about rollaways and what causes them right after the intro. Okay guys, this is hole one at Inverness, and it's notorious for taking your disc and turning it into a roller, flipping it up, and sending it OB. And there are several things happening here that I think are important for us to understand about what's going on with the disc and why it may turn into a roller. So there are three big factors in whether a disc wants to get up and roll. The first is the ground, the angle of the ground, and the angle of the disc coming in. That's very important. The spin of the disc, and then the shape of the disc. The nose, whether it's sharp or whether it's rounded, can make a big difference. And we're going to talk about those. Let's go over here and see if I can find the disc that rolled away. Okay, now this is real scientific, so I've got my real scientific stick. But the first factor that we tend to think about is the angle. We see that there's a hill here, so there's a big chance for it to roll. But do we ever stop and think why? Well, what needs to happen for a disc that's hopefully flying pretty flat to turn into a roller? Well, something needs to abruptly change its dynamics and send it from being flat, or most of the time what's happening is coming in on hyzer, and it's changing its direction. So it's coming in, landing, and then something's acting on it to flip it up so that it now gets vertical. The disc has to get vertical to turn into a roller. So what's happening when you've got a slope like this, even when you're coming in like this, if it comes in at a certain angle and there is a critical angle at which the disc, when it hits, instead of the weight transfer, the inertia coming in and wanting it to do this, it's going to hit that critical angle where it's going to hit and all that weight's going to go into the nose and it's going to want to pop it up. That's why if you've got a hillside, you're coming in and you need to throw around the corner. If you think, well, I'm just going to do a real spike hyzer, yeah, that may get you around the corner, but the odds are when it hits the ground on the other side, it's going to have no choice but to pick up and roll. You might want to take a little lower line or something that's going to come in and be able to scrub that off. We may look at that on hole number 8 is a very good example of that. But same thing here. What happens is we're throwing around the corner and then our disc, usually we throw a little bit nose up, and so it gets up a little higher, and then it starts to crash back. And so what's happening is it's coming in, it's hitting the hill at that perfect perpendicular angle. So all that force is coming in, and instead of it hitting like this and dying, it's hitting like this, and it's wanting to pick it up, hop up, get like this, and now it's a vertical wheel on a hill. It's going to want to roll. The second thing that a lot of people don't think about is the spin of the disc that combines with the angle to give us that funkiness. So when you're throwing a forehand backhand, a right-handed backhand, it's spinning like this. Well, but it's traveling forward and spinning like this. So when it comes in, not only is it coming in at a certain angle, but it's actually spinning in reverse of its direction. So it's kind of like it's trying to do a back paddle. As it hits the ground, that backward spin is helping to lift the disc up. So spin can be a very important factor in whether that disc is going to pick up and roll or not. If it doesn't have a lot of spin, or it's got the opposite spin. If it's coming in, I've thrown a forehand and it's coming in, what it's going to do is it's going to hit. Yes, it's going to roll, but it's going to take that energy and push it forward and hopefully die out quickly because it's not doing that jarring motion to lift the disc up so that it turns into a roller. It's really kind of helping push it forward. So whenever you're thinking about a disc coming in, you need to think about what kind of spin it has too as it's diving into the basket. That's why sometimes it's going to be better to throw a forehand or a backhand just because of the spin and how it's going to approach the ground when it comes in. And now finally, the shape of the disc is going to have a big impact. Think about it. This guy coming in is going to be a blunt instrument that's going to kind of diffuse some of that impact. And it's also, because it's rounded, even if it's coming in at a pretty steep angle, it's still going to scrub off some of that downward direction because of the shape of the disc. So it's going to have less opportunity to grab and stand up. Whereas you go a 14-speed relativity, you can even see the mud from where it just dug in. It's coming in and it's got that one little point that all the power, all the momentum's coming into, but there's a certain angle that it comes in that it's no longer going to be able to scrub that energy off to go forward. It's going to dig, stand up, and then the disc is going to go, oh, look, path of least resistance is go right back down the hill. So the angle of the ground, the sharpness of the disc, and then the spin is either going to help or it's going to mitigate that diving in. Remember, it's all about energy transfer, and that energy's coming in. It's coming in hot. It's going to have to do something with that energy. Well, that spin can help dissipate it, or it can help take that energy and put it right back into the disc so that it's going to stand up. So there you go. Quick and easy, down and dirty. It's not super scientific, but at least hopefully it's going to get the conversation going where you're thinking about when you're throwing, especially those holes that you keep getting rollaways. Maybe you can go, oh, that's because the ground is doing this and I'm coming in at this angle. Maybe I need to change disc, throw a little bit lower, or throw the other side, forehand or backhand, so that it's got a different spin and coming in at a different angle and I can match the ground better. Okay, let's talk some practical examples, all about rollaway mitigation. And what happens is I'm down here, the basket's up there, and it's probably 30 feet up, maybe a little more. But if you can see, the hill slopes like this on the front. This is matching the slope of the hill. But at the top, once you get up past the tree, it then sits like this. So what happens is people are usually back a little bit ways, especially if you're throwing from the long tee pad. And let's face it, most of us are right-hand, backhand dominant. If you throw a right-hand hyzer that's coming into the basket and you don't get up to the upper ledge, what's going to happen is, and I'm going to recreate this best I can, but what happens is this disc comes in, remember this is like this, it's coming in at an angle. It can't help but roll away because of the degree of the angle. I would have to, because of the severity of that slope, I would almost have to come in perfectly flat, almost nose up, to be able to keep it from hitting, standing up, and rolling away. And that's what we see all the time here. Let's see if I can just get one up. I'm going to act like I'm trying to get near the basket and I'm going to get by that pine tree. And of course it stopped right there. Dang it! All right, let's try it again. Fortunately, a root stopped it. But you can see it came in soft. It hit ivy, but the slope is so hard, and the fact that it's coming in on that angle. So what you would want to do, if you can, and think about it, this is where a forehand coming in is going to mitigate some of that. Because even if, so we've got this, but we've also got a little of this. Even if it comes in like this, the shape of it is going to take and want to slide it out versus fight to counteract that energy. So it's much better to throw a forehand from here to let it match the ground, but also the spin and the angle, even if it comes in a little hot, it's going to help slide versus hit, dig, and roll. Does that make sense? Let me try one more. Nice sharp edge Thunderbird, because that would be a usual shot that you would throw from back there. And a lot of times they don't just stop up there. They come all the way back here. So I've spent a lot of time down here making my second, third, and fourth shot. And let's not even talk about what happens when we go up to putt up the hill. Let's go up there. Okay, welcome to Death Putt Central up here on the yellow basket at hole number 2 at Inverness. And so many rollaways happen up here. And one of the things I didn't talk about earlier is the whole idea of rocks and roots. So pretend this is a root. Even if you've got flat ground, and the disc comes in and it hits, and the two angles of the root and the disc combine to want to pop it up, or it's coming in at an angle and it gets between the root and the ground, that forward energy has to be mitigated and it's just going to flip it up. So the terrain matters as well, and y'all all know this. But it really comes down to physics, angles, you know, energy, etc. So you always want to be paying attention to what's going on the ground here. So even when you're putting, you hit something high or you hit the band, what does the disc want to do? It immediately wants to fall and fall vertically. It's want to drop. And the thing is, anything that lands on this ground is gone. Let's see if I can do this. It hits the basket and drops. And there you go. So now that putt for birdie, or a lot of times putt for bogey, turns into a, oh crap, I'm now back down the hill. I have to risk my neck crawling back down here. I should have taken the path. And now I've got to throw it back up there. And I'm not done, because it could hit another root, hit the basket again, and come right back. I've seen people stand down here and throw 3 times before they're able to get the disc to stay up at the top of the hill. So it's a very challenging thing. But if you know what the ground is trying to do, what the disc is trying to do, you can mitigate that somewhat. So what I would do from this shot right here is I'm going to try to throw a forehand. And I'm going to throw the forehand so that it comes up this way and is at least landing flat when it hits the ground, matching the terrain, or even maybe cutting back just a little bit so it's got nowhere to go. It's just going to hit the ground and plop up there. This hole is some of what taught me about plopping the disc, because I kept getting rollaways until I realized forehand, match the ground and let it plop. Okay, so take a look at this terrain right here. We're on a, what, 20-degree slope, could be more, I don't know. But it's almost like a turtleback slope. So it's not only this, but it's also running down that way as well. So I want you to hold this in your mind, and we're going to jump back to the tee pad. So I'm thinking, all right, I need to throw something through this gap and then let it drop to the left. So of course I'm going to pull out something overstable. Now this is a little too much, but I'm going to use this as an example. If I throw this out and it gets the break, what's going to happen? As it goes out, because of this hill, we generally tend to have it a little higher, nose up, and then it comes crashing in. But remember that ground up there by the basket is like this. So this thing, as the more stable, overstable disc comes in, it's crashing harder and harder. It's hitting in almost a perpendicular angle. So all that energy is hitting the ground and getting transferred back into the disc to stand it up, and then it just takes off rolling. So even though it seems like the ideal thing to do is to throw an overstable disc here, if you're going to do that, you need to throw it lower so that when it crashes, it hits the hill early and scrubs the speed and the energy and uses it to push up the hill instead of dive into the hill and want to come back out the other way, wants to bounce and come back. What would be better is to take something that might be a little flippier, throw it out, let it start to break around, but have the disc start to settle down as it's coming into the hill. So it's going to come in at this angle versus this angle. And I would recommend a rounded, less sharp disc too, to help mitigate so it catches and wants to scrub it off versus dig in. And this is where people get in trouble on this hole, because they throw too sharp, too stable a disc that's just going to guaranteed to come in, hit that hill because of the angle, the spin, and the shape, and it's just going to grab, and it's got nowhere to go with that energy but to pop it up and send it down the hill. I hope that makes sense. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you. I know that was a rapid wrap up. Let's try this again. Hey guys, I hope that makes sense. Please leave some comments. Let me know any other questions you have about this or others. And I do appreciate you coming around with me, and I hope to see you out on the course.